morning. We
Good
have
morning.
some news is always changing around here. So last time we spoke, we were talking about the potential of a peace deal, and we've received one, this memorandum of understanding. But it seems like it's on shaky ground as the attacks in Lebanon occurred last night. I'm sure we're going to talk more about that. And today's topic is this overall peace deal has really infuriated some of the Zionist radicals, both in Israel but also in the United States. So we're going to go ahead and get into all of that. We have a few other domestic issues to speak about, and I'm excited. Good morning, Senator.
Well, good morning, Morgan. It's good to be with you, and so we look forward to talking about that. I wanted to touch on something that just caught my attention. There was an article in the Daily Wire that was sent over to me, and it mentioned that there was a Pennsylvania minor league baseball team that is going to forfeit a scheduled game because several of their players refused to wear Pride Night jerseys. And you can see them. I mean, disgusting that any human being is required to wear those things. But anyway, the organization kind of backed down. Because they knew that the players would not wear them, and so they decided to cancel the game and do just the Pride Night. So they're going to have this celebration of homosexuality. I think. Let's see, I believe the pitchers involved were Landon Roop, J.T. Brubaker, Ryan Walker, and now let me see. I mixed up something. Okay, so that's the Pennsylvania minor league baseball team, but this is an outgrowth of a bigger controversy involving Major League Baseball, and there is now a clash between the Christians who play ball and the sponsors who are catering to LGBTQTXYZ stuff. And it has triggered a federal investigation because the problem is that for Christianity, for Islam, for that matter, there is a very, very stark divide between the practice of homosexual activity, sodomy, and the religious beliefs of Christians and of Muslims. And so the idea that you would wear a symbol on your uniform that signifies that you are allied with this movement of sodomy and transgenderism, homosexuality, it is deeply offensive to religious people of a number of religions, but particularly Christians. The Christians are the people who play ball. Baseball is pretty much Christian sport, and they're just refusing to go along with it. I'm amazed, honestly, that baseball promotes this stuff. It's a good thing that Department of Justice has intervened, and they say that forcing Christians to wear pride gear may violate the Civil Rights Act. Under the Civil Rights Act, there's a requirement to reasonably accommodate religious beliefs because of the free exercise clause of the First Amendment to the Constitution. So this supersedes all state, federal, local laws. The Constitution does. And so my guess is that the baseball players will win. It's a particularly sensitive issue for me because I was a pretty poor kid growing up, and I was a snake hunter out in the Florida Everglades back in old times, I guess. And we would hitchhike, and we went out on one time. We had a lot of trouble getting a ride home, and then lo and behold, a fellow in a brand new car stopped, and we went and jumped in the car to catch a ride back to Miami. And he briefly kidnapped us, jammed on the accelerator to where it was, the car was going too fast to jump out. And he grabbed for me and just thinking, okay, I got a couple of kids here. We're going to take advantage of them. And I fought back, and before long, the two of us are fighting. He finally decided, okay, this isn't going to work. Pulled over, let us out. Meanwhile, my buddy is in the back, untying the bag of. We had a bag full of venomous water moccasins, and as we left, we threw them on the floorboard of the car, and the fellow drove off with all these water moccasins running around his feet. So he hopefully went back to his buddies and said, probably not a good idea to try to pick up and rape snake hunters. It doesn't turn out too well. So I find it very deeply morally offensive. And I know, I was, to me, it's just a humorous story of something that turned out very bad for a very bad, deviant, dangerous man. But for every one of me, there are a million people who were victimized by this LGBT movement when they were children, and who, have suffered, for a lifetime from some of the things that were done. So it's a good news story. There's finally, we've gone through this crazed period where we have things like the transgendered, men. You've got deviants who are competing in women's sports, even though they're men. Just a societal craze that took place. And now what I see is culturally we are moving gradually back to a sense of normalcy. Mm-hmm. So we've got a long ways to go, but I think this is a start.
Yeah. Well, I know that I'm not sure about MLB, Major League Baseball, but I know in the NFL of football, you have players who are penalized, and some of the religious scriptures have been banned from them portraying them on the fields. None of them have ever been fined. They've always been threatened with fines. But there was this one very interesting case where a person was fined. It was the had to pull it up. It was the Houston, Texas's linebacker who wrote on the black tape, "Stop the genocide," talking about Palestine, and he was fined $11,000 for that game. Mm-hmm. So, you're not allowed to take these political stances unless it's, corporate approved, which is a shame on its own kind of thing.
Yeah. And, and I can kind of understand, if the message about Palestine and the horrific Holocaust taking place there, if that could be prohibited, okay, fine. But did those same teams do that when Black Lives Matter was in a frenzy? I don't think so. And J.D. Vance has pointed this out with the Major League Baseball situation, that this is a double standard, that you can say, well, we just don't allow this on our uniforms, but you did allow it when Black Lives Matter was in its heyday. You allowed them to, people who advocated it to wear whatever patches and so forth. And now you're saying, okay, Christians cannot express their views. Mm-hmm. And I think they've got a real problem with that.
Yeah, I think double standard is the big thing to take away with on that. Now, the big thing in the news is whether this peace deal is going to survive or not. The memorandum of understanding had 60 days to be finalized and implemented. It was supposed to be the initial 14-point plan was supposed to go in effect upon signing, which the very first point was that all aggression would stop, including on the Lebanese front. So, news broke last night that there was an exchange of fire. Israel, if I'm not mistaken, you can correct me, in kind of laying out the events, that Israel struck first, trying to get some strategic post that they believe that it was a Hezbollah outpost. There was over 40 strikes. We can play a video of that really quick, and then you can kind of tell me about the event and kind of what your feelings are on this whole peace deal.
Yeah, it is amazing. It's been the goal. I forget who said it, but there was a prominent Israeli who said that they intended to Gaza-ize Lebanon, which means to eliminate all infrastructure that supports human life, all of the living facilities, especially targeting all medical facilities, religious places, churches, temples, places of education, even cemeteries, basically to make it impossible for human life to exist and to either kill or expel the people who live there. This is more far-reaching than anything that the Nazis ever announced. So looking back at the Holocaust and all of this stuff, the Nazis never felt emboldened to the point where they could say, oh, we're going to do this and that. What they did was another matter. But you have the Israelis where not only are they carrying out a Holocaust against their neighbors, but they're announcing it. They're just boasting that, we're going to do these things. Now, they have gone in very systematically. Now, you will never see a whisper. You'll never hear a whisper in the media about what they're doing to the Christians in Lebanon, because the media has very carefully crafted it, and they present this idea that, well, we're going after Hezbollah, this organization Hezbollah. Mm-hmm. Hezbollah is a political party that represents the Shia Muslims in Lebanon, and it's a political party, but it also has a military arm whose duty is to defend the Lebanese border against Israeli aggression and attacks across the border. And but Lebanon is the most Christian nation left in the Middle East today. Mm-hmm. And there will not be a whisper mentioned about the fact that there are Christians, and that the Israelis intend to exterminate all Christian life, all Muslim life in this major part of Lebanon, and replace those people with these very vicious, cruel Jewish settlers, the same ones who are zip tying men's penises in the West Bank and gunning down mothers who are, walking their children to school and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So anyway, well, what happened? What started this most recent thing? It's very clear that Netanyahu has opposed the peace deal just vehemently. And so what he wants to do is he wants to break it. Part of the peace deal is that Israel would withdraw from Lebanon, that they would go back to their borders, and the agreement says that the parties will respect the sovereignty, the territorial integrity of Lebanon. That means from the Israeli border onward. Yeah. But Israel has had a massive military invasion of Lebanon. And so what they did to trigger another crisis with the peace process is Israel launched an attack on the northern side of Ali al-Tahir hilltop, which was a very strategic point overlooking Nabatea. And it's a place that the Israeli troops have been trying to capture, and the Hezbollah forces have been defending their terrain. And what happened is the Israelis sent in tanks, and the Hezbollah forces employed drones, and they hit the tank, and they destroyed the tank, and they killed 4 of the Israeli attackers. And so the way that Israel always does it, they take offensive action, and then when the other side resists and fights back, then they say, well, this just shows that they're terrible people, they're fighting us, and now we can go in and we can slaughter more people. So that's what they've been doing, is trying to, they use this as a trigger for a major new offensive.
Yeah, we were speaking backstage about, this map in particular kind of shows you, it's the area that was struck was the central southern part of Lebanon. But the land that Israel has acquired is far greater than the land that Russia is now has taken in Ukraine, which that kind of shows you the drastic level that Israel has taken in just swallowing land. There's videos online of them, after a village is completely evacuated, they don't, say, okay, there's no Hezbollah here, we got to continue on. They flatten the entire village. So there's this premeditation that is evident that they don't want those people to come back to their homes and to their belongings.
Yeah.
And so
that's an amazing figure that you cite, or comparison, the fact that Israel has now, through an act of overt aggression, fought their way across the border and seized more of Lebanon's territory than all of the Ukrainian territory that Russia has taken.
And has years, it's been years of that ongoing conflict. And this is just, let's say, I would say that this is an incremental effort. Right after October 7th, they were bombing Lebanon, but this has, the amount of land that has been acquired in such a short period of time has far drastically outpaced that of, the Russia and Ukraine war. So I think that is very interesting to look at, because it's if the state of Israel was in such an existential threat that Hezbollah presented to their nation, I don't know if they'd be able to acquire that much land that fast. In stating if these Hezbollah was as much of a threat, it kind of seems like their military is far more advanced to the point where they can take a lot more lands, detonate villages, and we talked about it here, deface churches. A lot of the propaganda in the West asserts that these nations in Southwest Asia are purely Muslim. If you're a Christian, they'll kill you. If they're a Jew, they'll kill you. We learned from the aggression with the U.S. and Iran that Israel as well was also included in striking that one of the oldest synagogues in Iran was blown up. You have Christian communities in Iran. We spoke about the Christian communities in Syria. So it's heavily pushed to the American population that these populations don't exist, and if they do exist, they must live in fear. Which it's ironic given what Israel does to Christians in Israel themselves.
Yeah, it is interesting when you mention Iran. Iran has had a very successful, thriving Jewish population for centuries. And while, they definitely resist evangelization, Judaism is not an evangelical type of religion. It's sort of a self-contained thing. Now, some years ago, I would say within the past 10 years, it was fairly widely reported that Iran had the greatest number of Christian converts per capita of any place on earth. So Christianity was spreading very quickly, and it was actually causing a bit of a crisis within the government. And there were petitions by some of the imams. You got to do something to control this spread of Christianity. Now, I think the war launched by the United States and Israel, unfortunately, is probably going to have just that very effect to drive the people of Iran away from Christianity, which I think had a very positive effect on their culture. But not much we can do about that at this point. So let me just.
No, you're fine. Iran was just a kind of a beautiful fact that I had seen that they opened up, I believe it was 2 years ago, it's a train station, but it's to honor Virgin Mary. So and none of the Western states do that, even though they subscribe to be, the beacon of Christianity and Christian values. You have a state that's supposed to be hostile towards the whole religion, making a dedication in Virgin Mary's honor. So I thought that was very interesting. I didn't mean to cut you off. So
yeah, and we don't want to overplay that. I mean, it's not as though you're encouraged to go and pass out Bibles in Iran. Don't get us wrong, but when you compare that to a place like Saudi Arabia, our very close ally, you do not wear a cross, you did not identify yourself as a Christian in any way, or you're going to encounter problems with the authorities. And if you go too far, you're going to have your head on the chopping block. So it's, the Arab countries that we align ourselves most closely with are often the very most despotic and extremist countries. Kuwait has a very extremist form of Islam that they practice. Saudi Arabia does. Others are more moderate, but now the new government of Syria, headed by the former head of Al-Qaeda and staffed by all of these Al-Qaeda beheaders and rapists and so forth. Syria used to just tout the fact that they had this great belief in religious harmony, which was not tolerance, but it was actually an affection between people of different faiths, whether Christians, Muslims, Jews. The Jews were back during I think Jimmy Carter administration, Israel managed to get all of the Jewish population removed from Syria. Syria didn't push them out. It was Israel that took them out because they knew that in time they were going to be attacking and destroying things there. But actually under Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, they very carefully maintained all of the Jewish housing. They would not permit anyone to move into it in hopes that someday the Jews would return to Syria. And now what will happen now, I'm not sure, because now Al-Qaeda is in charge and the moderate government is gone.
I wish I had the video clip of that, of Trump saying that it's kind of blasting Israel and their attempts to rid Lebanon of Hezbollah, saying they're doing a terrible job and that they might have to get Syria involved, which it's a kind of a very ironic moment in American history.
I'm going to say that the people of Lebanon have such a hatred for Al-Qaeda and for ISIS and for the whole terror movement that we sponsored in Syria. And so if you think they're fighting hard against Israel, haven't seen anything
Yeah.
like what would happen if all of a sudden you had Al Qaeda come charging across the border.
Mm-hmm. Now, through this development of Israel and Lebanon exchanging a fire, the JD Vance was set to go to Switzerland to speak with other Iranian negotiators to hash out the details within this memorandum of understanding and create a larger framework of a peace treaty. But given that you had both parties have, for different reasons, said that they were going to postpone those negotiations. You have the Iranian officials coming out and saying that the first point of this memorandum of understanding was not understood. And JD Vance came out and said it was a logistical reason. So what was your kind of takeaway from that? And where does that leave us? Does this kind of leave us taking, one step forward, 5 steps back in the diplomacy effort?
Okay, here's what's going on. We're going to go through the peace plan, the MOU. I believe that President Trump has made a firm determination that this war will end, and he's going to do everything in his power to make it end. It may appear to people overseas that somehow President Trump is almost like a dictator. He can just make decisions on his own and do what he wants. But everyone has limits on their power. And my concern is that the new generation of leaders in Iran, they're much more shrewd. They're much less trusting. They're much less gullible than their parents were. And to them, they may look at this and say, okay, well, this is what the U.S. and Israel are doing, and this is how they're dealing with us, and we can't trust them. And I would caution the Iranians. So any Iranians who are listening, take this to heart. It is a mistake to simplify the decision-making process in the United States and to somehow assume that because President Trump has made a firm decision to impose this peace, that it's a done deal. Mm-hmm. We saw this with when Barack Obama was the president. He made great effort to do the JCPOA agreement, and I made a fairly mild criticism of Iran for something that they could have done that would have sort of helped PR-wise to cement the agreement. And that was the one time that I ever got a communication from the Ayatollah Khamenei, who went to great lengths through a secretary in London to my legislative aide, and the message he wanted to convey to me is that don't think things are that simple in Iran. Don't begin to think that somehow there is some one person who can make a decision and just impose it. And his point was well taken. It was accurate. The power structure of Iran is complex. It's a major country, and we need to understand the complexity. At the same time, the same principle goes in reverse. The mm-hmm. Iranians now, if they're smart, they'll recognize that they want to help President Trump carry this agreement into fruition, because it's, President Trump personally signed the agreement. He wasn't going to initially, but I think I think he wanted to just say, okay, this is a done deal, and I'm through with all the back and forth. So he signed it personally. Now, I think the Iranian leaders, I understand the bitterness and so forth, but they need to understand for their own benefit that they can undermine this agreement just like Israel can. And they need to do everything possible to accommodate President Trump as he tries to carry this out. And particularly, the one thing that Trump is hanging his hat on is the nuclear issue. And I would, if I were in a position to advise the Iranians, I would say, whatever you do, this nuclear thing has always been a big boogaboo that has caused enormous suffering for Iran. And you've always taken the position that you never wanted to have a nuclear weapon in the first place. So give ground on that and allow President Trump to appear victorious in the thing that he says is the one thing of most importance. And then you take all of the other advantages, but you've got to do something to cement them, because otherwise the Israel First lobby is extraordinarily powerful in this country. The global Zionists have enormous clout, and you run the risk that the next thing we end up in some huge military conflagration and perhaps even a ground occupation of Iran. And you can say, well, we'll just hang on and we'll be victorious in the end. 20 years from now, we'll drive the United States out. Well, a lot of bad things happen to a country in 20 years. And, I don't want to see that happen to Iran. And I certainly don't want to see it happen to the U.S. So
let's go ahead and play a little clip of the Israeli lobby at work for just a little bit. There is other comments that was not on this news broadcast, but it's some of the marching orders that are
Trump for signing a tentative peace deal with Iran. But back in Washington, he's facing an avalanche of criticism from both parties.
What Trump has done in Iran is the art of the disaster.
I believe he is getting poor advice.
I would suggest us getting a president who knows how to negotiate.
The initial deal reopens the Strait of Hormuz, lifts the U.S. blockade on Iran's ports, and gives the regime 60 days to make a more substantial deal, which must include enforceable guarantees they'll never obtain a nuclear weapon.
So I just say that, or play that, because there, are the duopoly that is the war party is very unhappy about the likelihood that there will be no more bombs that will drop. You have Chuck Schumer and Ted Cruz now allying together in this effort to derail the peace negotiations by basically claiming it to be a huge disaster. I believe there's another clip that Ted Cruz basically says the money that will be unfreezing and this suspected $300 billion reconstruction aid that we probably need to go into, because there has been a lot of back and forth on whether that's going to be U.S. tax dollars or that's going to be from the surrounding Arab nations, is going to be used to either develop a nuclear weapon or annihilate the United States. So you have that kind of rhetoric that's going around.
Yeah. It's interesting to see Chuck Schumer and Ted Cruz singing the same song for the same master, which is Israel and the whole Zionist lobby. I actually was the most prominent political figure in Virginia supporting Ted Cruz when he ran, because he was making some good peace overtures. And then I saw what he did. There was a meeting of Christian leaders from all over Syria pleading for him, and he took the opportunity to disparage all of them and make some points with Israel. Now, I understand that Ted Cruz is now sort of the, I don't know what it is. He's kind of a Israeli man of the year. And there's some $1 million award that goes with it. And maybe, I don't know how big a deal $1 million is for Ted Cruz. Maybe it's not that much, but the support of Israel and whatever he does he doesn't care whether Republicans win or lose. Now, he's got to know, Ted Cruz understands that if this war does not end, Republicans get wiped out in the midterms.
But he's not up for re-election this term. He's a
senator. And he doesn't give a flip, because it's one thing for Republicans to go down, but it's another thing for him to lose his gold star from Netanyahu, and he doesn't want to give up his gold star. So anyway, well, let's talk a little bit about about the agreement itself. It is an excellent agreement. President Trump, he sort of took everyone by surprise. We did not know what he was going to do. And okay, first of all, it ends the war with Iran, which is a huge thing for the entire world and American taxpayers and so forth. He ends the war. It respects Iranian sovereignty. Now, this is interesting because it has specific language about Iranian sovereignty, and it pledges no intervention in the internal affairs of Iran. That's a very big deal because we've been involved in Iran with CIA spy operations, promoting various terror organizations, some of the Kurdish dissidents and so forth. And this is a U.S. commitment that we are going to respect their sovereignty, which means we're not going to decide who runs the government. We're going to leave that up to the Iranians. It opens the Strait of Hormuz, which is of enormous importance to Asia, to Europe, and to the American commuters who are faced with the huge gasoline bills. It ends the U.S. blockade, the naval blockade that we imposed, which was, I think, fairly successful as a military venture. The CENTCOM commander announced that pursuant to the orders of the President of the United States, the blockade was ended. And so any shipping traveling through the Straits of Hormuz, one way or the other, going in or coming out, has nothing to fear from the U.S. Navy. They are not going to continue the blockade, and that's already in effect. There's a provision that says that for 60 days, that Iran will allow traffic to flow freely through the Straits of Hormuz. And then there is some language that suggests that after the 60-day period, that Iran and Oman, which they both border the strait, that they would probably be in a position to regulate the traffic in some way and perhaps charge a fee. The agreement, interestingly, respects Lebanon's territorial integrity, and it ends the Israeli intervention in Lebanon on paper. Now, Netanyahu came out last Thursday, and he said that the IDF would stay in Lebanon as long as needed, which in Israeli terms, that means forever.
Yeah.
The idea that somehow Israel is an ally of the United States is pretty far-fetched. Allies cooperate. They may not always be in precise agreement, but from the very beginning, Trump did not even want to enter the war, and he was politically, he felt boxed in, and Israel Netanyahu calculated correctly that if Israel attacked and Trump did not follow on, that anything bad that happened could be blamed on the United States. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I have a
into it.
I don't understand the symbiotic relationship on what Israel provides. The U.S., they give the tax dollars, the weapons, and in return you have Israel boasting about interfering in American elections. I guess one thing you could say is intel, but likely sometimes we've heard that the intel is often faulty, either by incompetence or by intentionality to try and get us in
Yes.
conflicts.
Because they, Netanyahu, I think, convinced Donald Trump that if we would just go and drop bombs on Iran, everybody would say, Hosanna, Hosanna, we're saved, and start applauding as the bombs dropped and killed their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
It was bizarre, but if you have that much influence, you can sometimes influence people to accept irrational proposals. We know historically there's no example of any situation where a country has risen up against an attacker dropping bombs on their people. And you look at the Second World War, you look at the battle over Britain, where the Luftwaffe launched a massive aerial attack on England. England had a lot of Nazi sympathizers, tremendous amount of sympathy for fascism. And when the bombs started dropping, all the dissension was gone. People were of one mind; they were going to fight against Germany. Same thing happened on the Japanese front. The U.S. had, I'd say, the good majority of the American people were opposed to getting into war, either against Germany or against Japan. And when the fleet was attacked at Pearl Harbor, now Pearl Harbor was not even U.S. territory. It was a territorial, possession of ours, but it wasn't a state, I guess is what I should say. And but it didn't matter. I mean, that was the American fleet; those were American sailors, and there was a surprise attack. So it was very, very deliberately deceitful of Netanyahu to make that false claim. He knew that government was not going to fall. He's not that naive.
Yeah, you have Joe Kent also resigning, basically alluding to that being the reason was that the United States officials was getting faulty intelligence by Israeli officials, and they knew it to be faulty, or he knew it to be faulty, and that's why he resigned from his position.
Yes. Well, anyway, so let's continue here. Okay, the agreement permits Iranian ships to sail and to trade almost immediately. I don't know how many. I think some Iranian ships have already passed. The arrangements for ships getting in and out are still being solidified. It's not that there's arguments about it. It's just a question of some of the mechanics. But Iranian shipping will be able to go. There is immediate action as of signing to provide Iran with all of the permits and the documents for them to trade oil throughout the world, wherever they want. And of course, I think I just saw that the first shipment of liquefied natural gas has arrived in India already as a result of this. So there are ships getting out, and so of course that will benefit Iran tremendously because that's their major export is oil. Now, it sets up a $300 billion recovery fund, but the fund will not be funded by the U.S. taxpayers. It's going to be funded by Iran's Arab neighbors, some of which are very interested in smoothing things out with Iran. You already had, let's see, I believe it was the UAE that has already provided several $billion transferred over to Iran, the first money going over. So in any event, there'll be a very large recovery fund to help to rebuild Iran after, Iran didn't start this war. Iran didn't want a war. They didn't attack anybody. They were hit by a surprise attack, very much like Pearl Harbor when Japan attacked the United States. And it's not unreasonable that the neighbors that provided basing for U.S. planes to attack Iran should kick in some money to rebuild. It lifts sanctions on Iranian trade. This is probably going to be put in place over time as Iran complies with their part of the deal. I think we'll see the president will release sanctions, and he'll get others to release their sanctions. It unfreezes at least $100 billion in frozen Iranian accounts. Now, there's confusion. There's some people who say, oh, the United States is going to be paying money to Iran. No, that's not at all the case. Iran has money that it owned, that it earned. Much of it was from oil that it sold to different countries around the world. Some of it to China, some of it to all kinds of places. And the U.S. Froze all of that. We prevented countries from paying their just debts to Iran. And now we're going to unfreeze those so that the countries that owe the money to Iran can go ahead and repay it. China, I think, has something like $20 billion that is owed to Iran that they've never been able to pay because of the U.S. Freezing actions. The agreement is set up to where the United Nations Security Council will approve the peace deal. And so you're talking about the U.S. has to agree, so Trump controls that. China and Russia have to agree, no problem there. So that leaves you with France and Great Britain. And even though we've got lots of friction with both of those countries, the fact is that they have enormous pressure to end the war because it's cut off their oil. They've done all the stupid things in the world. They cooperate in cutting off Russian oil. Now the next thing they're cutting off. So Europe is in a mess. They need to get it. I think the UN will approve the peace deal. And let's see what. So in all of this, the nuclear disarmament is a tremendous priority for the Trump administration. The agreement says that at a minimum, that there will be international supervision of Iranian efforts to dilute the concentrated uranium. This is the U-235, which is the uranium, the type of isotope that's used to make nuclear weapons. And Iran has something like 900 to 1,000 pounds of this high grade concentrate that it has like it's concentrated to 60%, and it doesn't have to be concentrated too much more to make a nuclear weapon. And so the agreement is that at a minimum they'll dilute that, but that's still a work in progress. And it would be an enormous political mistake if Iran did not comply enthusiastically with that provision. And because if they don't give Trump the cover that he needs to carry out the rest of it, then you'd be amazed how the pro-Israel lobby can tangle things up and prevent it from being implemented until the next presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, we've had talks about this before on the show. Is Iran being very agreeable with the U.S. and trying to quell their concerns of nuclear enrichment? I know they were floated to give their enriched uranium to a third party, and all of these negotiations kind of fell apart with bombing each other and Israel kind of getting involved and derailing the plans. Operation Midnight Hammer, how we had to come and save Israel after they got into a direct engagement with Iran. So that's what I worry about, is the allowing there to be room for this floating question of Iran has a nuke or doesn't have a nuke that will kind of linger there, that will allow the U.S. to be pulled back into another engagement kind of thing. So I hope that is.
I see that as an issue where Iran has a lot of control over what happens, and you're going to have, there are a lot of very embittered people in charge in Iran now, because their fathers, their mothers, their children have been murdered by the Israelis principally, but I think the United States played a role in this. So understandably, they just are very entrenched in their position. And I just hope that they don't decide to push on that issue, because the president only has so much power. There's no one who doesn't have some contravening power centers. Now, you go to Saudi Arabia, where the crown prince can behead anybody he wants any day of the week. That's kind of an extreme case. But in complicated, civilized countries like the United States, there are always factions that compete. And so it's very important that the Iranians understand the limitations on Trump, even though he has decided, for whatever reason, a lot of it's the midterms, some of it he seems to have some understanding of the injustice of the Israeli position, particularly in Lebanon. Because we've had J.D. Vance talk about it,
Yeah, we can play that video. There is also another video of Trump at the G7, kind of going into that as well. We could play, but let's go ahead and just play this one real quick.
Yeah.
The Axios report, that Netanyahu is fuming. That's not reflective of the conversations that I've had with him, but maybe he's saying something to somebody else that he's not saying to me. What I will say, and this does bother me, is that you've seen people within Bibi's cabinet who have come out and attacked the deal, and in some ways very personally attacked the President of the United States. And I guess my message to them would be twofold. Number one, Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world. And the second message I would give to some of those cabinet members. Bibi, to his credit, has not gone down this path. But to some of these cabinet members in Israel who are attacking the President of the United States, the other thing that I would say is that over the last 3 months, 2/3 of the defensive weapons that have protected your homeland have been built by American hands and paid for by American tax dollars. The problem for Israel is not Donald J. Trump. And anybody in Israel who thinks their biggest problem is the President of the United States needs to wake up and smell the reality of the situation that country is in. Thank you all.
So that's very interesting. I think maybe one of the cabinet members he's referring to is Ben Gvir, a very way more radical than Benjamin Netanyahu. We spoke about it backstage about this post that he had made last night, just highly genocidal. Was probably the kindest term I could use for it. It starts off, for every tear of an Israeli mother, 1,000 Lebanese mothers must weep. All of Lebanon must burn. It's just the comments from this man is absolutely criminal and just pure insanity that he feels so emboldened to say this and put it on a public platform such as X. But he's also been very critical of the peace negotiations because he would like to continue to bomb Lebanon, it appears.
He's a good example. I wish he were some obscure, guy sitting around a bar making some wild statement. But I'm not aware of anything that was ever said by Adolf Hitler that came close to the type of thing that he was saying there. I mean, maybe I could be wrong. Maybe there's something I'm not aware of. But, what he's saying is basically that for every Israeli who dies, 1,000 Lebanese civilians should die.
Mm-hmm. That every Israeli life is worth 1,000 Lebanese souls. So it's which is a preposterous, statement to make. It basically shows this kind of entitlement.
It shows the hatred. I mean, just the raw hatred that's so endemic within the Israeli leadership. It's this idea that if you are sufficiently harsh and brutal with all of your neighbors, you can just crush them. You can steal their land. You can steal their farms. You can eradicate their cemeteries, their churches, their temples. You can just expunge their entire civilization as though it never existed. And we've seen the report from the New York Times, very well documented, of the shepherd and his family who were attacked by dozens of Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank, where Israel is the legal authority. And they came in and they pushed around, they stripped everybody naked, and then they beat them. They dragged the man. His eyes were, his eyes were just filled with blood where he'd been hit. And then they zip tied his penis. Just the ultimate cruelty, humiliation. And then before they left, they stole the family's flock of sheep that they lived on. They lived just like shepherds in Jesus' time. No significant difference. And here you had these settlers, people of just enormous cruelty and just merciless people who are very greedy. They stole everything that the family owned. They took their wedding rings. They took their passports. They took their money. They took the sheep herd the flock that they maintained, and these things go on all the time. The Jewish settler movement is designed to exterminate all Palestinian life from the West Bank and to steal all of their belongings, all of their farms, all of their homes. and they're doing a pretty good job of it with a lot of encouragement from Netanyahu and his government.
Yeah, that's important to note. I know that we're kind of nearing the end of the show. I know we have one more topic. I'm not sure if you would like to get to it today or maybe
Maybe we'll take that to next week.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. Well, you know, we discussed a lot. Kind of want to see where your head's at on where this negotiation is going to develop in the coming days. You know, what is your kind of speculation?
I would just say I'm very hopeful because I am confident that Donald Trump is determined to make it work within the limits of his ability. That doesn't mean that it's a done deal or that it's going to happen, but I think the die is cast, the decision has been made, and you can see already that there was a sense of shock among the Israel First crowd, and now all of their mechanisms of power are starting to surface. You're seeing all the interviews on the major television stations and criticizing the peace deal, putting Israel's actions in a positive light, even though they're designed to destroy the peace initiative. Ultimately, never forget the two objectives that Israel started the war with is number one, to get American soldiers fighting and dying on the ground in Iran and occupy that country for the next 3 generations. They failed because there was such little support for the war among the American people. The number 2 objective is that this time they want to attack and seize parts of Lebanon and settle them with Jewish settlers, exterminate all of the Christian and Muslim populations there or drive them out. And that one's still up for grabs. And hopefully they don't do it. I mean, it's a horribly unjust war that they're fighting against Lebanon. It's a war of aggression, just as most of Israel's wars are.
Yeah, I think that it isn't outrageous to say that the state of Israel, they like the state of chaos because it allows them to conduct these actions that in times of kind of normalcy, I should say, we would be highly critical of them, you know, doing the terror attacks in the West Bank, their attacks in Lebanon. And they're continuing to still bomb Gaza and not allow food in. So all those things, when we kind of add the mix of Iran and allows for Israel to kind of hide in the shadows and continue to conduct themselves the way that they do. Well, I want to thank you so much, Senator, for speaking to me today, providing me insight, and I want to encourage everybody to tune in next week to Focus on the News.
Thank you, Morgan.